hear this, you are not alone. This is the resistance.
If you want to convey a particular image and you want people to look at you in a certain light, you have to demonstrate that yourself.
Exactly. And when I first dreamt up the whole John Connor ideology for this entire resistance, the important part was I had only identified a few missing pieces that probably would have been like a really pivotal point for these movements when they grew to such large proportion. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
One of them was they declared leaderless movement. It was a leaderless resistance at that time. It still is, quite literally.
Yeah.
But when I looked into it, I realized politicians have puppets. So I said, well, what happens if the activist community gets together and creates its own puppet? So I created this whole John Connor thing of this person that could have been declared responsible for all of these nonviolent movements, in which all these nonviolent movements could convey their ideologies, and then John Connor would speak of these ideologies. What I didn't think of was the collateral damage that would blow back from that. Not everybody thinks clearly when they find this information, and it can be infuriating to some.
Yeah. You know, some people are awake, some people are still asleep, and some people
and
are awake.
When you wake up the sleepy people in a very rude manner, not good. No good thing can come from that.
No, like you were saying before, sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of the awakening, and even when you wake up and even if it's a smooth transition, ideologies do tend to clash. The Tea Party and Anonymous clash on occasion. I see so many anti-Alex Jones people out there, you know. All people fighting the same fucking war, but are butting heads for the sake of namesake. It's like Crips fighting Bloods or shit like that.
Well, they're doing the same thing. The only way that they can derail what's happening here is if they can get the activist community to behave as uselessly but still as volatile as our government.
Well, what I see happening is they're trying to do the same thing with civilians that they do in the prison population, pit everybody against each other so that they're fighting each other rather than fighting the, quote, prison guards.
Exactly. So once all that starts happening, it's a very it becomes a very skewed ideology, because people would hear us speak and say, well, look, right there, you just condoned violence. You condoned attacking a prison guard. But it's metaphorically. We're speaking in terms in order to explain what we're trying to convey.
Yeah, and just
all
because
of that aside, because this is just really to say that, guys, I don't condone shooting police officers, but I'm not an idiot either. If I see 90-some-odd armored vehicles come down into a neighborhood and start opening up houses and pulling families out and loading them into buses, my first order is grab your guns. So I'm not anti-guns in the home. I'm not anti-having weapons to protect yourself.
Yeah, it's called being responsible.
Don't touch the gun laws in both countries until we can actually figure out what's happening.
Exactly. People need to be responsible in their actions. Do what you have to do, but don't be irresponsible and stupid. If it's war, it's war. If it's stupid, it's stupid.
We've survived this long with them.
Yes.
Yes, they're probably unconstitutional. Yes, they're probably not practical, and so on and so forth. But as they stand, we've survived. If we change them with more restriction, it'll get a lot worse. Not a little bit worse, it'll get a lot worse. So we just leave certain laws as they are until the dust settles for a little longer, because this is going to turn into a shit show. Everybody's going to want to do something stupid somewhere.
Yep, give them the
in regards to what just happened. So we have to demand that our politicians say, whoa, the nation is in a state of shock. We're not going to change certain things at the whim of a hat just because one guy. We can't do that. That's what's important. That's what the resistance is going to convey to its political leaders. And this is what was conveyed to them when I went. Because when I went, I didn't wear a suit and tie. I didn't shave. I went wearing a red sweater with a white bandana and a black pair of shorts. as standard of a Canadian citizen as you could possibly get. I did that on purpose. I didn't want to blend in. I didn't want to have to camo myself to get in there.
Yeah.
I wanted to go in as me because I do my best to represent everybody that thinks the same way I do, that feels like so many things have to change, and I've taken it upon myself that I'm going to try and get to the most prominent people in my country as humanly possible.
And how did that work
quite
out?
Literally a Henry Kissinger quote that caught me on this one.
Okay.
Right after 9/11, Henry Kissinger said that he saw a great opportunity for the New World Order to emerge. And he said that no tragedy should ever go unutilized.
Yeah.
It's important to know that, because if those are the rules of the game that they're choosing to play, then we have to adhere to them.
Yeah.
That means that there was a tragedy in Moncton, New Brunswick, my little last hometown, and the activist community has no choice but to utilize it. We didn't make it happen, but it's here. So what are we going to do with it now? Because that's how those guys think.
Yeah.
I need even the biggest conspiracy buffs out there to take into consideration that this guy knows everything that we know, maybe a little less, and you know what, maybe even a little more, we can't be sure. But he knows everything that we know. The question is not why he did it only. The question is also who he thought he was shooting. Did he think he was shooting just corrupt police officers, or did he go as far as thinking that they were foot soldiers of the New World Order? Those are two entirely different spectrums of conspiracy and of public involvement, and so on and so forth. And we'll only know the truth if we can get to him.
Yes.
So all of this has happened already. There's a tragedy at stake, and we are forced to look into it. That's what all of this, the beginning of all of this, is merely there to indicate that we have to look into it. And looking into it means getting in the front lines, getting into the trenches, and going to see the very people that we choose to bitch about online.
Okay, and how did all this play out? I mean, I'm assuming you got to talk to some of these guys. You were saying...
Yeah,
before,
well, I'll bring
do
it through the
ambush
day,
journalism.
if you're patient with me, because it's actually a nifty little story.
Okay, shoot.
As always, it was a funeral, so we have to go with a little bit of respect and dignity. There's families there. There's a lot of civilians there. You can't paint the activists with a bad brush. Last thing I wanted to see was a protest there. I was really worried about it. I didn't want to have a Westboro Baptist church situation on my hands. But I already knew that our community was better than that.
Yeah.
So I went in, decked out as a standardized civilian, as I mentioned to you in private conversation. Just, regular sweaters and whatnot. Just looking like a regular guy, not shaved. And I go in, right? And I decide, okay, well, we're going to do this, the quote-unquote Canadian way. So
Right.
I'm going to blend into the regular civilian crowd and not try to be a journalist and not try to be a politician or anything like that. I'm just going to go in as a regular guy. But I'm going to go in with a mindset of I really want to see what this is doing to my city. Because that's what it boils down to. And some people never really saw it too much further than their nose. In that building was Stephen Harper. In that building was Justin Trudeau. In that building was Thomas Monclair. Those are the three most prominent names in Canadian politics. In that building was the Governor General. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what the Governor General's job, okay, there's three people in the country of Canada that can actually send us to war. A Prime Minister can send us to war. If the Canadian people decide, no, we're not too happy with that decision, we have to petition the Governor General. The Governor General can then look at our Prime Minister and say, no, that you're not going to war, your people don't want it, I don't sanction this war.
Okay.
Right? Now, if the Governor General has to make a war declaration, the Prime Minister can't do anything. The citizen has to petition the Queen. The Queen is the only person that can override the Governor General's command. So, in essence, he's our Prime Minister's boss, if that helps anybody understand the somewhat importance and magnitude of this person. He's not just a guy. He's one of the guys, if not the guy. It's like I explained to some people. Unless you're going to break into Buckingham Palace and sit down and have tea with the Queen, you're not going to get any closer to her attention than if you can get the Governor General's ear.